Welcome, dear friends. Welcome to fourth chapter of our story. Tonight, we continue with other page of story that will stretch across many nights. A story of Chichen Itza, where stone temples whisper secrets and life moves in rhythms long forgotten. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what hour of the night keeps you company. It's always magical to know that these words travel across oceans and time zones. If you like the stories, please let us know in the comments which story you would like to hear next. If you are ready, soften the lights, let the world around you fade away, and allow yourself to wander into history's gentle embrace. Imagine now that you walk further into the heart of Chichen Itza. The pyramid of Kukulkan still towers behind you, its shadow long and commanding, but before you opens another marvel, the Great Ball Court. It is immense. Even today, standing in its ruins, its scale is staggering. The walls stretch nearly 100 meters long, soaring up like stone cliffs on either side. The playing field lies in the middle, flat and wide, its limestone surface polished by centuries of feet pounding against it. And high upon the walls, impossibly high, hang two great stone rings carved from solid rock, each about 3 meters across. They're not set low where a player might easily strike a ball through. They sit high above the court, out of reach like the eyes of gods gazing down. Close your eyes and imagine the game beginning. The plaza fills with people. Farmers, traders, artisans, priests, and rulers all gather, pressing shoulder to shoulder, their voices rising into the air. Drums thunder, shell trumpets blare. The players step into the arena, warriors stripped of weapons but dressed in heavy belts and padding, their bodies painted with black lines and red spirals, their faces fierce with determination. The ball itself is heavy, made of solid rubber, dense and unforgiving. When it strikes the stone court, it bounces with a hollow, resonant sound, as though the earth itself were speaking. The rules are strict: no hands, no feet. Only hips, shoulders, and elbows may touch the ball. Imagine the skill required, the precision of twisting one's body at just the right moment, striking the ball with a hip and sending it soaring upward toward the stone ring. The crowd gasps. The drums echo. The game is not merely sport. It is ritual. It is a performance, a prayer, a battle played not with swords, but with sweat and stone. But this is not a game where both teams are equals. Here, every point carries weight beyond score. For the Maya, the ball game was not entertainment. It was cosmic drama. It retold the most sacred of myths, the tale of the hero twins. Long ago, it is said, two brothers, the hero twins, descended into the underworld, where the gods of death challenged them to a game. The court of the underworld was dark and sinister, its walls lined with skulls, its floors slick with ash. The gods cheated, they plotted, they demanded sacrifice. But the twins were clever. They endured the trials, outwitted the lords of death, and through their cunning and bravery, they brought light and order back to the world above. Every ball game played in the great courts of the Maya was, in essence, a retelling of this cosmic struggle. One team symbolized life, the other death. To strike the ball was to strike against chaos. To keep it in play was to keep the world in balance. And to lose could mean more than defeat. Here in Chichen Itza, the stakes were higher still. For this was no ordinary ball court. It was the greatest in Mesoamerica, vast enough to hold thousands of spectators, designed with such acoustics that even a whisper spoken at one end could be heard clearly at the other. Words carried like the voices of gods. Every cheer, every drumbeat, every cry of triumph or pain echoed through the stone like thunder. And with such grandeur came solemnity. The reliefs carved into the walls show scenes not of playful sport, but of sacrifice. Warriors kneeling, their throats open, blood flowing into the earth. One panel shows a decapitated player, and from his severed neck sprout not mere blood, but serpents, a vision of transformation, of life given back to the gods. It is debated still by scholars who bore into the stones. Who was sacrificed the winners or the losers. Some say the losers paid with their lives, punished for their failure. Others believe it was the winners, for to die in such a way was the highest honor, a gift to the gods, a guarantee of eternal glory. Perhaps it was both at different times, depending on the rituals. Perhaps it did not matter, for in the end, the ball game was never about sport. It was about feeding the gods, sustaining the order of the world, renewing the cycle of life and death. Picture the final moments of such a game. The ball soars high, glancing off a hip, bouncing off the stone, spinning upward toward the ring. It slips through. The crowd erupts, a roar like a storm breaking over the sea. The drums beat faster. The priests raise their arms to the sky. The players kneel, their chests heaving, sweat dripping down their painted bodies. Some look triumphant, others resigned. The decision is made. One, or perhaps several, will be taken aside. Not punished, not shamed, but honored. They will ascend the steps of a nearby temple, their heads held high. Torches blaze, conch shells sound, and before the watching crowd, their blood will flow, feeding the thirsty gods, ensuring the rains will come, the maize will grow, and the city will endure. To us, it seems brutal. To them, it was sacred. Life was not seen as ending in death, but transforming. The sacrifice was not destruction, but continuation, a soul given back to the divine, a heart beating once more in the body of the cosmos. And so, day after day, season after season, the ball game was played. Not always to the death. Many games were simple contests, a measure of skill, a way to train warriors to settle disputes. But always, beneath the sweat and the cheers, lingered the echo of the sacred, the weight of myth. Stand in the ball court today, and even in silence you can hear it. Clap your hands, and the sound bounces back, sharp and crisp, as though the walls themselves are applauding. Speak a word, and it travels, carrying across the stones. Close your eyes, and you can imagine the drums, the crowd, the ball striking against the floor. You can see the painted warriors, the priests waiting, the shadow of Kukulkan watching from the pyramid nearby. The court is empty now, its walls weathered, its rings silent. It still breathes. It still remembers. And in its stillness, it whispers the same truth the Mayan knew, that life is a game, death is not an end, and in the eternal play between the two lies the rhythm of the universe. The morning sun rises over the jungle, spilling golden light across the limestone. You are there, standing at the edge of the great ball court, its massive walls enclosing the space like the sides of canyon. The echoes here are uncanny, almost supernatural. Clap once, and the sound repeats itself, bouncing back 7 times, a mystery of acoustics that engineers still marvel at. To the Maya, this was not accident. This was design. The chord itself was an instrument, an extension of the ritual. Every cheer, every drumbeat, every strike of the ball was magnified, reverberating into the ears of gods. Imagine the players before the game. Young men, lean and strong, their bodies hardened by years of training. Some had been chosen from noble families, others from among common warriors. From boyhood, they had played smaller versions of the game in village courts, passing the heavy rubber ball back and forth, practicing the art of striking with hips and shoulders. It was no gentle sport. The ball could weigh nearly 4 kilograms, and when it struck flesh, it bruised, cut, even broke bones. Training demanded resilience. They wrapped their waists with thick belts of leather, sometimes padded with wood, to absorb the impact. Their arms bore scars. Their ribs carried the memories of collisions. To be a ball player was not just athleticism. It was endurance, devotion, willingness to suffer for glory. And glory mattered. For in the Maya world, the ball game was not an idle pastime. It was politics. It was religion. It was justice. Picture this: 2 neighboring cities, their leaders disputing over land or tribute or honor. Instead of plunging their armies into war, they might settle the matter on the ball court. The best players would represent each city. The outcome of the game would decide who had the favor of the gods, who was righteous in the eyes of the cosmos. The stakes were real. Crops, trade routes, even lives might hang in the balance. At Chichen Itza, the court was the grandest stage for such contests. Its sheer size dwarfed all others in Mesoamerica. To play here was to step into the very center of the world, a place where heaven and earth connected. The crowds gathered early, streaming in from dusty roads, from distant villages. Farmers carrying woven mats to sit on. Women selling tamales wrapped in maize leaves. Children clinging to their mothers, their eyes wide with excitement. Merchants with jade trinkets, feather fans, cacao beans for trade. The air thick with the smell of roasting maize and burning copal incense. And then came the priests, cloaked in long robes, their faces painted with soot and chalk. They carried bowls of burning resin. The smoke curled upward, sweet and pungent, drifting over the crowd, sanctifying the court. They chanted prayers, low and rhythmic, calling upon the gods of the underworld, of maize, of rain. Finally, the rulers arrived. Lords and nobles seated themselves on high platforms overlooking the court, their headdresses of quetzal feathers glittering green and gold in the sunlight. Beside them sat emissaries from distant lands, traders from the Gulf Coast, messengers from other Maya cities, perhaps even envoys from the faraway highlands. This was not just a game, it was spectacle, politics, a theater of power. The drums began, slow at first, steady as a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. Shell trumpets answered, their sound like the call of some great beast echoing through the jungle. The players entered. Each man stepped onto the court with solemnity, his face painted in symbols of war or death. Around their waists were thick yokes carved of wood or padded with leather. Their arms were wrapped in bindings. Some wore elaborate jewelry, jade pendants, obsidian earspools, talismans for strength and favor. They saluted the gods, raised their arms to the sky, and the game began. The ball struck the court with a dull, heavy thud. The sound carried, amplified by the stone walls, reverberating through the ears of every spectator. One player twisted his body, his hip colliding with the ball, sending it arcing upward. Another intercepted, slamming it sideways with his shoulder. The crowd gasped as the rubber sphere soared dangerously close to the ring, then fell short, bouncing hard against the limestone. This was no casual play. Every strike required precision, agility, control. To misjudge, to stumble, was to let the ball fall lifeless to the earth, a failure, a shame. To strike it cleanly, to keep it alive, was to prove worthiness, to keep the cycle of the universe in motion. And then, hovering behind the physical contest, there was myth. Every Maya child knew the story of the hero twins, Hinapu and Zbalenk. They were the sons of a slain father, called to the underworld by the death gods, forced to play ball in the dark court of Zabalba. Again and again, they faced trials, poisonous snakes, burning houses, endless nights. The gods cheated. They mocked. They sought to end the twins. Yet the brothers outwitted them, using trickery, courage, and the sacred ball game itself as weapon. In the end, one twin was killed, sacrificed, burned, but rose again. Together they triumphed, shattering the power of death, bringing maize, sunlight, and renewal to the world above. For the Maya, every match on the ball court was a reenactment of this myth. One team embodied the lords of death, the other the twins. Every strike of the ball was cosmic, a blow against darkness. Every goal was victory for life. And when a game ended in sacrifice, it was not cruelty, but ritual. The blood spilled was not loss, but offering. The head severed was not horror, but renewal. Life fed death, death fed life, and the cycle endured. Stand with me at the very center of the great ball court. Look around. The walls rise nearly 8 meters high on either side, stretching over 150 meters long. It is a corridor of stone, grander than any stadium you have ever known. Above you, the sky feels distant, framed like a strip of blue between gray walls. The sun beats down, yet the acoustics here change the very air. A whisper can travel across the court, reaching ears on the far side. A clap of the hands, as I mentioned before, rebounds 7 times, echoing back with an otherworldly rhythm. It is said that even a whispered prayer to the gods could be heard by them more clearly here than anywhere else. The court was, in a way, an oracle, an acoustic bridge between the mortal and the divine. Now imagine the game itself beginning again. The players, tense and ready, moving like dancers across the smooth limestone. The ball slams against a hip, ricochets off a shoulder, spins through the air. The crowd roars. But pause here and look not at the athletes, but at the crowd itself. Who are they? At Chichen Itza, the audience was a tapestry of society. Closest to the action sat the nobles, reclining on mats, shaded by attendants holding wide feather fans. They were perfumed with copal and crushed flowers, their ears heavy with jade discs, their clothing woven in brilliant dyes. Behind them stood merchants, artisans, and visiting dignitaries. Further still, at the very edges, the common people pressed in, farmers smelling of maize fields, hunters with the scent of wild game clinging to them, children clambering onto their father's shoulders for a glimpse. Each person saw the game through a different lens. For the noble, it was politics. Victory here affirmed their dynasty's favor with the gods. A triumph meant prestige, alliances, the swelling of tribute. For the merchant, it was opportunity. Victorious cities attracted trade, wealth, the flow of cacao beans, and obsidian blades. For the common farmer, it was myth and prayer. The game represented forces far beyond human control. Rain, maize, fertility, the endless struggle of life against decay. Watching it, they believed they too were participating in a drama that kept their crops alive, their children fed. Let's focus on the players once more, for theirs was no ordinary life. From youth, chosen boys were trained to master the sacred ball game. They learned balance, agility, strength. But beyond physical skill, they were taught ritual. Each game was preceded by fasting, prayer, purification. Players were expected to abstain from indulgence, to keep their bodies ritually clean, to carry themselves with discipline. They were not only athletes, but servants of the gods. Their training courts were smaller, humbler than the great ball court, but the rules were strict. The heavy rubber ball could not be struck with hands or feet. Only hips, thighs, shoulders, or elbows could send it flying. The danger was real. Archaeologists believe broken ribs, crushed bones, and even deaths were common. Yet the risk was embraced. For to play well was to stand at the very edge of glory and eternity. Some players wore yokes of heavy wood, carved and polished, strapped tightly to their waists. Others padded their arms with leather bands. Helmets were rare, but sometimes masks were worn, snarling jaguars, death's skull grin, or stylized serpents, transforming the player into something more than human, a vessel of myth. Imagine their breathing as they waited on the court, slow, deep, steady, lungs filling with hot jungle air. The weight of the ball pressing on their thoughts. The crowd silent for an instant. Then the crack of the drum. The match begun. Now shift your gaze upward, to the rings mounted high upon the court's walls. Carved from stone, each ring is positioned some 6 meters off the ground. The goal of the game was to send the ball cleanly through one of these narrow openings. But consider the difficulty. A heavy ball, struck only by hip or shoulder, hurled upward with precision and force enough to pass through a stone ring no wider than the ball itself. Such a feat was rare, nearly miraculous. When it happened, the crowd erupted, voices rising like a wave, drums pounding, shells blasting, incense smoke curling high into the sky. It was said that when the ball passed through the ring, the gods themselves were watching, their eyes turned toward earth, their judgment made. And here we must pause, for this judgment could lead to sacrifice. The sacrifice is one of the most debated aspects of the Maya ball game. Did the winners die, or the losers? The carvings here at Chichen Itza show a decapitated player, serpents springing from his neck, his blood transformed into life itself. Some scholars believe this honored the victorious, the strongest, the most blessed, offering their blood to the gods in the ultimate gift. Others suggest it was the vanquished, their defeat sealing their fate. Whichever it was, the meaning remained the same. The spilling of blood was life to the earth. The heart, the essence of being, was fuel for the cycle. And in this place, sacrifice was not horror, but privilege. The chosen man, whether victor or vanquished, passed into the next world as a hero, remembered forever in stone. Think of the sound. The conch shell blasting, mournful and deep. The crowd holding its breath. The priest lifting a blade of obsidian, black as midnight, sharp enough to part flesh with ease. The act swift, ritualized, sacred, and then silence, until the chants began again, calling the gods to witness the offering. But the ball game was not only for death. It was also for life, for politics, for law. Disputes between cities might be settled on the court, sparing armies and bloodshed. Captives might be forced to play, their fate sealed before the match began. Even within a single city, rival factions might challenge one another, using the game to prove legitimacy, to display strength, to affirm their place in the order of things. The game, in essence, was a mirror of Maya society. It held within it warfare, justice, sacrifice, entertainment, religion, politics, myth. And in Chichen Itza, on this grandest of courts, it became something more, a cosmic stage where the cycles of life and death were enacted before thousands of eyes. Stay here a moment longer. Close your eyes. Hear the rhythm of drums, the smack of the ball against stone, the roar of the crowd, the blast of shell trumpets. Smell the incense, the smoke of burning copal, the sweat of bodies pressed together, the sharp tang of blood. This is not just a ruin. It is alive. It is echoing still with voices long vanished, with games long finished. The stones remember, and when you stand here, so too do you. We have lingered here in the great ball court of Chichen Itza. Its scale still surrounds you, the walls rising like cliffs, the stone rings suspended as if out of reach of human possibility. But the Maya did not build only one ball court. Across their cities, from small villages to the largest capitals, ball courts were everywhere. Some were modest, scarcely larger than a village plaza, their walls little more than shoulder-high slabs of limestone. Others, like this one, were monumental, dwarfing even the tallest men, built to draw thousands of eyes. The very presence of a ball court marked a city's importance. To build one was to declare, we are part of the great cycle. We speak to the gods through the sacred game. Now, imagine walking away from Chichen Itza, journeying through jungle paths to smaller settlements. In a clearing, you find a court half covered in vines, its walls low and intimate. Here, the sound would not echo 7 times as it does in Chichen Itza. Here, the players would be fewer, the audience perhaps only a handful of families. Yet the game was no less sacred. The ball still carried the weight of myth. The outcome was still bound to the favor of gods and ancestors. What changes, though, is the feeling. In small courts, the game felt closer, more personal. The players' faces could be seen clearly, sweat shining, teeth gritted, muscles straining. The crowd was not distant, but right there, within arm's reach, voices joining in chants, children running between the legs of adults, dogs barking at the sound of the ball. The sacred was not confined to the monumental, but flowed through even the most humble courts. Yet here at Chichen Itza, everything was magnified. The grandeur of the court was itself a message. This city is powerful. This city is chosen. This city plays for the cosmos itself. The architecture carried meaning. The long parallel walls represented the boundaries of the world, the ordered space within which life unfolded. The rings mounted high represented the portal to the heavens, the impossible striving of humanity toward the divine. The ball, hurtling back and forth, symbolized the sun on its daily journey, rising and falling, forever contested by forces of life and death. The game was not just a pastime. It was the universe in motion. Now, think of the sound again. The echoing clap of hands, 7 repetitions. The Maya, deeply attuned to cycles, to numbers, to patterns, surely heard in this a sacred resonance. 7. The number of layers in the Maya underworld. 13. The number of layers in the heavens above. Each echo, each bounce of sound against stone, was a reminder that life was nested within larger layers of existence. And here, in this court, the architects had shaped stone so carefully, so deliberately, that sound itself became part of the ritual. Even silence was amplified, heavy, profound. To play here was not only to move a ball, but to move through realms of meaning, each bounce resonating into the unseen world. But what the ball itself? It was not light, like the leather balls of later European games. It was solid rubber, heavy, dense. Some estimates place its weight at over 3 kilograms. Imagine striking such a mass with only your hip, your thigh, your shoulder. The impact could bruise, could fracture bones. The Maya players wore protective gear, yes, belts of wood, pads of leather, but still the risk was constant. To play was to endure pain, to risk injury, to prove strength. The ball, too, was sacred. Rubber was precious. It came from the latex of trees, harvested, mixed with juices, shaped, hardened. To create a ball was an offering in itself, the result of knowledge passed through generations. When it struck stone, the sound was like a drumbeat, heavy, resonant, commanding. It was the heartbeat of the game, of the cosmos itself. Now, let us widen our vision beyond Chichen Itza. Across Mesoamerica, among the Olmec, the Zapotec, the Toltec, the Aztec, the ball game took root. Each culture shaped it, adapted it, yet all carried the same thread. This was no mere sport. This was sacred theater. The Olmec, earliest of them all, left behind rubber balls buried in ceremonial caches, proof that even in their time the game was tied to ritual. The Zapotec built courts in Monte Alban, their stone walls inscribed with glyphs linking the game to gods and rulers. The Toltec carried it into their own cities, entwining it with their militaristic rites. And later, the Aztec made the ball game part of their empire, played in their capital of Tenochtitlan, where nobles bet fortunes on the outcomes, where captives played under the shadow of death. Chichen Itza stood at the crossroads of all these influences. Its great ball court is perhaps the most eloquent expression of the idea. The game is the cosmos, life and death enacted in stone. Even centuries later, when Spanish conquistadors arrived, they were astonished to see the game still played. They wrote of rubber balls bouncing with impossible energy, of players hurling themselves across courts, of wagers laid, of rituals that confused and unsettled European eyes. They could not understand that this was not sport as they knew it, but something older, deeper, sacred. For the Maya, the ball game was memory itself, passed down from their ancestors, tied to the myths of creation, to the hero twins, to the underworld lords of Xibalba. To play was to retell the story of the universe. And so, as we stand again in Chichen Itza's grand court, feel the layers of time pressing in. The players gone. The crowd's gone. The priests with their obsidian knives gone. Yet the walls still rise. The rings still hang. The echoes still answer when you clap your hands. This place remembers. And in its silence, if you listen closely, you may still hear the thud of the rubber ball, the cheer of thousands, the chant of priests, the call of shells. You may still feel the weight of myth and sacrifice in the air. For the game is not over. It lives on in the stones, in the earth, in the memory of the world.